So the infrastructure question is undoubtedly one of the big issues when it comes to this sector. But perhaps let's begin here in Saudi Arabia. There's no doubt. Nobody has to be told that it's important to invest in infrastructure. We know that it is big, that means a lot of money. We know that it is costly. How is Saudi Arabia intending not just to deal with that here, because your country is very large, and you don't necessarily have that infrastructure to move all of this 2.5 trillion that you're going to find in the ground. How are you intending to deal with that, but also to make sure that you are playing the role that you intend to play in a super region context?
Well, transportation and logistics is a key enabler to the mining industry. And the great news that we already have a very strong infrastructure, and we have a great partnership with the mining industry. At the same time, we have a very ambitious transportation and logistics strategy which aspire to transform Saudi Arabia into a global logistic hub and to support all other industries, including mining. Many of the roads that we have built in the past have been built to support the mining industry. Our longest rail line was built to support the mining industry, which is the Northern Railway. And we already, I can, speak about that. We have already approved doubling of that line, investment of more than 4 billion riyals to support the mining industry. So we are geared and catered to support the mining industry and all other industries, whether tourism, Hajj and Umrah, trade, improve quality of life, and that's what we do. We are an enabler to everyone.
We like that, being enablers. So for those of you who, like me, your French is not very good, I would suggest that you pick up your translation set, because Madame is going to be speaking in French, and of course I want to make sure that I hear everything she has to say. Madame, if I can then come to you. You are from the DRC. We've heard a lot about a lot of the activities that is happening in your country. My question is whether or not, or to what extent, you are able to better coordinate the infrastructure question, primarily in the context for countries where they're landlocked. So the only way to get their goods from the mine to elsewhere is through another country. How are you seeing that work in an African context, particularly for you and your neighbors?
Je tiens d'abord à remercier le Royaume d'Arabie Saoudite pour l'opportunité. Nous, en Afrique, aujourd'hui, nous sommes en train de nous mutualiser pour pouvoir traiter nos minerais localement. Si je dois parler de mon pays, la République démocratique du Congo, nous avions eu à signer un accord bilatéral avec la Zambie pour pouvoir mutualiser et puis transformer et commencer à fabriquer des batteries, des précurseurs des batteries en République démocratique du Congo. Et nous avions signé un autre accord avec 3 pays, la Zambie, l'Angola et la République démocratique du Congo, pour le corridor de Lobito. Il y aura un chemin de fer qui va partir de la Zambie, en passant par la République démocratique du Congo, pour atterrir au port de Lobito. Cela nous permettra de pouvoir transporter non seulement les minerais, mais
This will enable us, of course, to be able to transfer our raw materials and to engage in this trade exchange, to create new opportunities. And of course, in one of our counties, we have an outstanding project at the phase of implementation, and we would like to establish a new deep water port to transfer the commodities of the fruits, specifically banana, and we are striving to find a strong infrastructure that enables us to benefit from our raw materials, thus exporting them. This with regards to your interest in the Congo context.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, the translation took a moment, so I just wanted to let him finish explaining. Yes, yeah, a couple of points, and I think I'm going to try to come back to you. I'd like to move on to our next speaker really quickly. Martin Ayisi is CEO of the Minerals Commission of Ghana. Madame spoke to some of the challenges that certainly she's having in her environment. I don't think that that is necessarily a unique scenario across the continent. How are you approaching this question of ensuring that there is sufficient investment in infrastructure so that the value add that is so important to African economies in particular can actually be extracted from the goods that we're mining, over and above the question of processing and manufacturing?
Thank you. In our case, if you look at our history, we've been doing gold mining for over a century. But then we also have two critical deposits of bulk minerals, which require some kind of associated infrastructure, primarily bauxite and manganese. Manganese has been mined in Ghana since 1916 and bauxite 1941. So government is trying to approach it in two ways. One, raise international finance to get people to come in and put these things in place. That's the first one. It's going on well. So as we speak, we have a whole ministry, for instance, for railways. And these things are ongoing currently. They are looking very good. So that's one method. The other one has to do with making it as part of the mineral development project. So if you take our huge bauxite deposit, we've broken them into four: the mining part, the refining part, the smelter part, and then the power and the associated infrastructure part. So companies are supposed to come in and then strike deals to get these things done. So this is the way we are approaching it for now.
Krill, you have a lot going on from the very brief conversation that we had. One of the key things, I think, when we're talking about the change broadly in this sector is cooperation. I can imagine that applies to looking at infrastructure too.
Definitely. And I think we just heard the Minister of Finance of Saudi who said that only jointly we can address the challenges in front of us. And I think we need to jointly overcome those barriers. And again, we applaud Saudi Arabia that is bringing lots of people from different backgrounds, different fields to have this joint decision making. And in our experience, and 40% of our investment is infrastructure, around the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Russia, it's only by joint efforts that we can make great things. For example, together with our Chinese partners, we invested and built the first and only railroad bridge between Russia and China. That railroad bridge will ensure that 10% of trade between Russia and China goes through this railroad bridge, and it was possible to do it only jointly with China. Now, lots of our partners are interested in Northern Sea Route, which is a part of Russia that basically this Northern Sea Route is a new path, the quickest path from Europe to Asia through our seas. And the traffic already increased 10 times, will increase 5 times, and only joint investments can really make sure that this is successful because lots of minerals and lots of metals are in this area that can be explored and developed together. And the final point I'll mention on joint cooperation is joint technology sharing and joint information sharing. Because, for example, we know that governments need to finance some part of infrastructure and make this infrastructure investment attractive for investors like us and others. So Russia is willing to share its experience how to make those government policy conducive to attract additional investment. And of course, Russia itself is a huge player in metals, and I'll just mention some figures. So basically, Russia is 27% of world production of platinum, 22% of world nickel reserves, 13% of cobalt, 15% of titanium. And we'd love to work with other nations to develop those resources, to share our expertise, our technology. And we believe also BRICS Plus is a great format to do this knowledge sharing, this information sharing, this investment sharing. And we will be proposing some new initiatives as part of BRICS Plus to ensure that we can do those infrastructure investments all over the world jointly, successfully, in the interest of all of the humankind.
One of the challenges, and there are many, if you look in a developing country perspective, that is really where the infrastructure challenge lies predominantly, not solely, but predominantly in developing countries. When we consider mobile telephony, for example, you saw this moment where we went from the rotary line phone to the mobile phone. We didn't do the normal step, there was a leapfrog. What I'd like to hear from you, Zhenghai, if I may, is your views on whether indeed there is a possibility of leapfrogging from having virtually nothing in terms of infrastructure to a situation where there is improved infrastructure, reason being the rate at which we need to begin producing and extracting has such a rapid growth over the next couple of decades, we can't wait to do it the traditional way.
Yes, because the demand of mining is growing sharply. For example, we invest a lot of mining in DRC, but infrastructure is not very good. But all of us invest a lot of mining, copper mining in DRC, so DRC government put a lot of effort to improve infrastructure investment. So, for example, the first time I visited this place, from our mining to Lubumbashi, it may take 13 hours, but now only 5 hours. So there's a new way to do infrastructure investment, such like for miners, for instruction, because there's some government cooperation. Chinese government set a company, invest all the infrastructure investment here. Instead, the DRC government gives some mining for this company. They do it for free. So maybe the new way can improve this kinds of problems.
How are we going to do it in a way that is manageable for economies and countries that are not just highly indebted, but whose GDPs are really on the low end of the scale, so effectively very little growth? So we need to attract that funding and investment. What is the best approach, Martin, do you think, in dealing in that question, to allow the kind of development that Zhenghai is talking about? Significant amounts of money have to be brought to bear, but in a way that is affordable.
So you need to create the right environment. So take the case of Ghana. Typically, our mining operations have been in the southern part. Now, thanks to technology, all the areas up north, close to the Burkina Faso area, we are finding minerals now, and there are big mines coming up. So what government is doing is to have bilateral relationship with some of these countries that can give us finance. For example, China. China is heavily involved in building many of the infrastructure facilities in Ghana. We even talked about extending it all the way to Burkina Faso. They have a huge manganese deposit in the northeast. It's been a logistic nightmare how to get this thing out. So it's been working very well. With the Chinese connection, it's been working very well. And perhaps this also gives us an opportunity to allow our Saudi partners to also come in. So this is what we've been doing so far. And then also, as I said earlier, depending on the size of the project, we make it part of the entire agreement. So for instance, in the next 6-7 months, or barely a year, we'll have a lithium mine in Ghana. Part of the contract we've signed is designed in such a way that this is also part of it. So government is doing its part, using its own resources. Government is trying to cut bilateral deals, as I said, with China, to put this in place. And also, depending on the nature of the project, we're making it part of it. So you either do it or forget about it.
Krill, I'm not going to make you the spokesperson for BRICS Plus by any means, but I think it also presents an opportunity, particularly in the bank context, BRICS Bank, looking at funding models that are going to allow easier access to funding, more affordable access to funding, and help in that. And of course, you know, Saudi Arabia has just joined BRICS Bank, and the resources that you have available and the access to capital can begin to facilitate, which I suppose underscores again the need for innovation in terms of how we think even for the finance question.
No, definitely. And I think, and again, Russia will be the chairman of BRICS this year. And I think it's very important that if we just take each of our nation's most innovative approaches and share them across BRICS platform, that becomes a huge way forward. I mentioned, for example, a bridge that we built with China. Well, we actually had to negotiate with government, increasing the tariff quite a bit on the bridge, so 20 times regular tariff, to make it worthwhile for our investment. But because for different miners, it saved 700 kilometers of transportation, it made sense for them. So it's those kinds of things that basically make investors come, but also are good for the customers. Also concessions. I think concessions is a great solution for Africa, for many other nations, because basically they can attract investment with an understanding that in the future tariff, there will be components that investors will get, and therefore lots of money can come in.
Yeah.
So definitely BRICS Bank, but also knowledge of BRICS projects and really working together on the best practices and explaining to some governments that it's better for them not to invest in 100% of the infrastructure, but maybe sponsor 30% in such a way that 70% comes from private investors, and therefore more projects can be done in a more transparent and sustainable manner.
Excellency Al-Jassar, I see you nodding a lot. So let me give you an opportunity to make your comments, because I think this is a tremendous opportunity in this particular space that Kirill is talking about for Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. Infrastructure projects, including transportation projects, are capital intensive, and they require huge investment. And no matter how much government money we have, it's not enough. So we have to work together, partner with the private sector, whether local private sector or international private sector, to make it possible to build those infrastructure, and also to find more creative way of structuring and funding those projects. For example, the transport and logistics sector strategy entails investment of 1.6 trillion riyals by 2030, and most of that will come from the private sector. That's why we are working together with the local and international private sector to work together and structure those programs into a way that makes sense for all parties involved.
Your Excellency, if I can ask you, from the context of the DRC and how you are looking at addressing some of the challenges, funding is an issue, access to funding that is affordable, that is innovative, that allows you a little bit more movement and freedom into how you use those resources. What is the DRC thinking around better use for that? Is it a domestic question, or is it looking at how you can better do it regionally as well?
Au fait, moi, je voudrais revenir un peu en arrière sur les thèmes, changer de modèle d'exploration en exploitation. Le problème vient de là. Autrefois en Afrique, ceux qui sont venus...
We need to make a change in Africa in general, and when the Westerners came into Africa to exploit our lands, and they exploited without thinking of the infrastructure or the modern infrastructure, the extracted raw materials, it was transferred to their countries, and today we are changing the scene, and we are dealing differently. As you are well aware that the infrastructure
Et nous, aujourd'hui, nous
must be developed, and now we're continuously and relentlessly working to develop this infrastructure, and we seek to understand more about our lands
accompagner dans les infrastructures.
of raw materials and fortunes, and in the light of a modernized infrastructure, harnessing technology
Voilà, nous sommes
as to reach to the best results.
hier déjà un protocole
We are here to sign
saoudite pour que nous puissions
a memorandum of understanding with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to
exploiter et puis aller
exploit
dans la
together
construction des infrastructures. Voilà un peu de mots sur les
opportunities of investment and to develop a modernized infrastructure. That's what I can tell you about the funding aspects of our projects,
nous avons les
which face major challenges, such as the challenge of energy, the challenge of environment, the challenge of provision of capital, and now we are in continuous search for investors that can and will come to RDC to invest and to transform our infrastructure to become a modernized infrastructure and to allow the people of Congo to benefit from their wealth, natural wealth.
Beneficiation is absolutely key in so many aspects and in so many communities. When we're looking at the value chain from an infrastructure perspective, I'd like to get a sense, if I may, and perhaps Martin, you can address this question. I'd like to get a sense from you how, more specifically and deliberately, Madame touched on it, the historic infrastructure and processes are no longer working. They don't serve communities in particular, let alone serving national economies and helping strengthen GDP. Where in your planning as a country, and therefore as an organization within Ghana, are you placing the import of infrastructure that is beneficial for mining and extraction and the economy, but that also ensures that the people of the country can benefit from the same use of that infrastructure?
So here we are. If you take Ghana, this is what we are doing. Currently, there's a deliberate government policy to develop our railways. And in doing so, we look at where the minerals are located. And then we look at other services. So it's not as if you create a colonial kind of situation where if you look at the railways we have now, they were just built to just take out the gold and other mineral resources perhaps 100 or 200 years ago. We have stopped that. So all the planning that is going into the current infrastructure development, like the railways in particular, take into consideration the other associated services that are supposed to come along with it. I mean, that's the way you can have your multiplying effect. So that's what we are doing. So as I said again, the one that is planned to reach all the way up to the north of Ghana, during the planning processes, we're not only looking at the various minerals that are along the chain or close to it, but other services that can also rely on it. And in particular, even looking at Burkina Faso, relying on that as part of the cooperation.
From an organizational, Shanghai, from an organization perspective, if I can ask you, how are you thinking about that question when it comes to people and populations versus the imperatives from a business perspective? Because we're increasingly appreciating that the two cannot be separated.
Actually, mining industry is the founder of all industry. All the population involved this area. We should, we invest a lot of beginning in mining industry. So if we do not invest in beginning of this industry, not a lot of population, they cannot involve modern society. So, for my opinion, the instruction investment actually it will drive by mining investment. So they'll improve all the society benefits.
So you're looking at broader the societal benefit and then understanding that mining will automatically benefit from that. Okay, 3 minutes. I love to do this, so you're just going to have to play with me. I'm getting excited. You have, okay, I'll give you a few seconds each to tell me that in the process of ensuring that investment in infrastructure is benefiting the mineral's value add, what is the first and most important thing that has to be done? And guess what, Xinghai? I'm going to start with you. So please go ahead. One thing as quickly as you can.
The first things we should do is...
Not the first. You're only allowed one.
Only one. So we should focus on all the people get the benefit from it. All the people, all the past people, not only one side of it.
So universal benefit.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Kirill, I want to reiterate so you don't try what Xinghai just did.
Just
only one, please.
I think new technology. There is lots of new technology coming around that is revolutionary. We should all be aware, AI, other things, and I think new technology has the potential to benefit many people, and everybody should study implications for the mineral world.
Okay, fair enough. Martin?
Put in place the right policies like Ghana is doing.
Of course, like Ghana is doing. Madame?
Bon, nous, en République démocratique du Congo, les entreprises minières ont l'obligation de...
And RDC, the institutions that are responsible for harnessing the mineral resources contribute in development projects, and the society projects development. We established a fund that derives 10% from the returns of the different mineral industries to be invested for future purposes for the future generations in Congo.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Excellency, your turn.
Well, I think it's connectivity. You know, whether it's road, marine, or rail connectivity is what is important to support the mining industry. And I can say that we are, as the transportation and logistics sector in Saudi Arabia, committed to partnering with and enabling the mining industry in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, so are you all, I want to test something. Let me know if I've hit the nail on the head in terms of where you think we need to go from here, okay? So, starting at the far end, we need to ensure that whatever we're doing in terms of infrastructure is beneficial to everyone. In order to make that happen, we need to be innovative in terms of how we think about it and how we actually mechanize. We need to think about copying Ghana because they're making sure that the infrastructure they're building is supporting and helpful to the communities. But we also need to make sure that the right policies are in place to underscore that. We need to make sure that we're thinking broadly from a neighboring country perspective, from a domestic policy and cooperation perspective, and we need to also make sure that we're following Saudi Arabia's example by making sure that they are building transport infrastructure that serves the broader community and the beneficiation of the value chain. How did I do?
Perfect.
Excellent.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.